this afternoon, we have 3 panelists who courageously agree to share some of their journey and as adoptive parents, and they will allow us to deepen our understanding of this pivotal issue. I now invite them to switch on their cameras so that we can introduce them to you. Thank you so much. So first we have Mrs. Catherine Falconer. We also have Mrs. Elsie James and Mr. Rudolf Boshoff. And they are all part of the SATS family. So we are very proud to have them in the studio today. Let's start with Rudolf. Rudolf, please introduce yourself and briefly tell us more about your family and your ministry.
Well, thank you so much, Lize. Yes, I've been part of the SATS family for quite some time, and it's been a blessing to work for SATS. But with that, I also have a little independent apologetics ministry that deals with cults and Muslims. And with that, got a loving family. It's myself, my wife, 3 dogs, and a little baby boy that is 23 months old. So God's been good to us. God added to us the little boy, and he's such a joy. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Rudolf. It's a joy to have you in the studio. Elsie, tell us a bit more about yourself, your family life, and your ministry.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. As mentioned, my name is Elsie. I am married to Jesse, and we have 2 boys. Sihle is 9 years old, and Bjorn is 11 months. Currently, my husband and I serve as young adults groups, cell group leaders at our local church. I'm also involved in worship and children's ministry.
Thank you so much. What a busy mom you are. So nice to have you here today. Kath, over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself, your family, and your ministry.
Yeah, so for me, I was a while ago, I was a missionary for 10 years as a single. And then I met Robert. Well, while I was a missionary, I was also studying online with SATS. So I was with SATS for many years doing my undergraduate degree. And then I met Robert. And then we got married and we did some missionary life together. And then later we adopted 2 boys, Ezekiel and Gabriel, age 8 and 6. And now I'm a part-time lecturer with SATS, and I run various businesses like the Green Box and various things within my community. And I love the Lord Jesus very much.
Thank you so much, Kath. An equally busy mom. We are so privileged to have you here. Let's jump in with your stories, your testimonies, your words of encouragement. Elsie, why did you adopt? Please give us some reasoning behind your decision and elaborate on that for us.
Sure. Yeah, for me, I think it's a bit of a different story from most people. So in our culture, adoption is something that is common, even though it's not called adoption. We don't usually go the legal route. So the boy that we've adopted, Sihle, is actually my nephew. I've always wanted to adopt him. But when I met with Jesse, I wasn't sure how I would bring this up to him because he comes from a different culture. But interestingly, the Lord always has a hand in such things. When we got married, the Lord put it in his heart to ask me what I thought about adopting Sihle. And I explained to him that is what I wanted to do. And then we started the process. It's been going on. And also my family was very open to us adopting him. My sister as well, because she worked full-time. So she only saw him maybe once every 2 months. and my parents were very elderly to look after him. They couldn't cope with that. So yeah, that's our journey. It was not something that we felt, it was just a cultural thing. It was something that I grew up with. But the Lord put it in Jesse's heart as well for us to adopt.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful story, your love story, extending also to Cecily. Kath, what about you? Why did you adopt? What was the reasoning behind this?
It was a long journey. So since I was a little girl, I felt called to two things, to be a mom and to be a missionary. And I became a missionary first and loved it. But I still knew God had called me to be married and to be a mom. So I had all of those dreams, and my husband, Robert, and I had those dreams together. And we tried, and I fell pregnant often. But for some reason, my body wouldn't keep a pregnancy. So I lost 9 babies in a row. And it was a very painful journey. And we had, both of us, a lot of medical tests to see what was wrong. Was our blood not compatible? Was this not, I had so many blood tests and all kinds of tests to see why. And they couldn't find a reason why. And I can remember one gynecologist, a strong Christian, he sat me down and he said, sometimes it's a blessing that you didn't carry full term and then lose the baby. But it was very hard for us both spiritually, because we both trusted Jesus so much, to understand why it kept happening. And then one morning, we were in Kenya as missionaries. I can remember Robert sitting across me from the breakfast table and said to me, have you ever considered adoption? And I had not. I had wanted to conceive myself, but I realized it was not in my control. And so I gave it all up. We both gave it up to God and prayed and went to various social workers, and God put the right one across our path. And so that was the reason why we adopted, because I couldn't conceive myself.
Thank you, Kath. Thank you for that courageous sharing, for being so transparent, because I think there are many couples going through the same struggle, and it was wonderful to hear how God led you to adoption. Rudolph, what was the reasoning for you to adopt?
Yeah, I can tease and say that I can say my wife won. No, I'm just teasing. It's really not it. But we've been married for about 16 years, and even before we got married, strangely enough, we had this chat one day before we got married. She was one of my best friends, and we just mentioned one day we would love. Both of us had it in our hearts one day to adopt children, and just said, if we look at our country, probably the best tangible difference you can make in this country is not by starting a new ministry, but by adopting a child, because there's just so many of them. And God just prepare our hearts. When I grew up, my grandmother was a social worker. So every holiday I had little brothers, probably 4 or 5 of them, that she always fostered. And they always came to her house because they had nowhere else to go. So through my gran, I can honestly say I always said I want to be like my gran, and really I really wanted to do it because of her, because I could see her heart for Can. She had a little brother that was given up for adoption. She grew up very hard, and she always wanted to also adopt, to give back, and so I must say, for the beginning of our marriage, we decided we will not have our own children, we will adopt. And it was a long journey, a lot of disappointments, a lot of maybes, a lot of things didn't realize, a lot of things didn't happen, but God was faithful. And we're actually in the process now of adopting. So I just need to say, we've not adopted fully yet. We're still in the process, but the way in which God brought this little boy our way, it could just be him. There's just no other way, but that's maybe for a different story. But yes, it is directly because of what we saw. Well, I saw my grandma, what Candace experienced in her own life, and then for God just bringing that opportunity our way and allowing for us to do it, and it was just really out of the hand of God. So we're so grateful for it.
Thank you so much. We are grateful to your grandmother, and we are so glad your wife won. What I hear from all of you is just God's hand in all of this. I hear how he guided you. Your stories are so different, but in it is God. And thank you for highlighting that. Kath, maybe can you share with us some challenges, both practical and spiritual, related to your journey of adoption?
I think the first thing was just to come to terms with, okay, it's not God's will, at least from what we could see, for me to give birth naturally. I think it was somehow giving that up and saying, okay, God, I trust you for the next step. I think our story with adoption, I think a lot of other people's roads has been a lot longer. But I think because I had such a long journey with pregnancies, that God somehow speeded up the process. So we found a Christian social worker. She was amazing. We had to put our album together of us as a family. And I didn't realize at the time, when we were in the process of adopting, she suddenly messaged us. It was a month after we'd given our album. We thought we would have to wait a year or two. She said, no, a little baby is at the hospital with a mom, and she has picked our album. And we were like, wow, out of all the family, she chose us. But she named him Imanati, which in Xhosa means, dear God, be with us. And she wanted a Christian family. So it's just how God led it. And we hadn't seen a picture of him, but we just knew he's going to be our son, and he's meant to be our son. And when we flew from Kenya to South Africa, I didn't realize I was pregnant again. It wasn't planned. And so we were like, what we're going to do is, well, God's called us to adopt, so we're going to go through with it, because we'd already done all the paperwork and everything. And a day or two before we were to beat him and pick him up, I started miscarrying. So I had all the pains of birth and everything. So by the time Ezekiel got into our arms and my arms, I can tell you it was as if I'd given birth to him. And the bond between us, I can't explain, even with Rob. I mean, we bonded with, I don't know, I cannot explain the spiritual and the emotional and the physical bond we had with Ezekiel. And yeah, it was challenging. It was amazing. But once I had this little baby in my arms, yeah, he was our son. And yeah, it's just been the most amazing journey to be his parents. And then also when we adopted Gabriel, it was a different journey, but it's just been very special. And we know that they're our sons, and I couldn't imagine my life without them, They bring such an African dynamic that I would never have had. Yeah, I just think of the church service 2 weeks ago, and there's African dancing and singing, and they just jived in. And there's just so many moments like that where I just know that I was called, even though it's been so hard. I'm not going to share the roads and the challenges we had with him, but without a shadow of a doubt, we know that they are our sons, as if they were my flesh and blood. So, yeah, it's the most challenging, but the most beautiful journey. And I would recommend it to anyone who feels called to it. Yeah.
Well, Dear audience, if you are not inspired by now, I don't know. Rudolf, what were the challenges that you faced in this journey of adoption? You're not even there yet, but on the way.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing. It can be very disheartening if you're in the process of adoption and there's a standing agreement maybe between yourself, the family, or the mom that she will see after carrying out the full term if she still wants to give up the baby. That can be a huge challenge, and it can be a lot of disappointment, especially if there's the expectation of the baby will come to us. That's something that you have to keep in mind. Other than that, also just I would say the process in and of itself can be quite hard. What you need to do, make sure you've got a very good social worker, somebody that understands, somebody that has a heart for it, somebody that's equally as passionate about you getting the baby and them wanting to get you to have the baby as well. That can be very hard, very disheartening. Then the other thing I think, which is very hard, is just the process in and of itself. It is a lot of waiting. You're going to have to sometimes work and repeat and give in a lot of paperwork. All of those things. We had to go for tests. We had to go for scans. We had to get specific forms to prove that we are not on a sexual register, that we are competent. And in many ways, I said to Candice, whoa, I must be honest. I wish some parents, not all parents, I just wish some parents would go through this process, even if they have their own children, because it's so hard. Some people just have children and they've got 6 in a row, and you look at them and you go, wow, what a blessing, but still, jeepers. It can be quite tedious. It's sometimes the process in and of itself. You have to wait, unfortunately, for other people to complete what they need to do before you can get to do what needs to be done. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge because we work in a system that where the wheels sometimes turn slowly. Sometimes there's no feedback. Sometimes you get to the feedback and things have not been done. Not always, but in certain instances, you have to apply good pressure to get things done and ask frequently. And like I said, that can be tedious. But other than that, I'll tell you this little story. We went to court and we officially were declared to be the legal foster parents in the meanwhile of little JJ. And I can remember this little baby sitting in the back, and in my mirror, I looked at my car and I could just see this little baby in his little back seat. And I was absolutely horrified because you see this little boy sitting there with his big eyes. He's so happy. And I said to Candice, what are we going to do? We've never parented a child before. Now suddenly we've got this baby that we have to look after. And I must be honest, it was a challenge because I thought in my mind, yes, I hope I like him. I hope he's got a nice personality, and I hope he's funny, and I've got all these things running through my mind. And just said to myself, cheapers, I hope this works out. But I'll be honest with you, it is so rewarding. It is just absolutely fantastic. It's something that overtakes you and overwhelms you, and the love that you have for that little child. I'll be honest, is something that catches you off guard, and it's really inspired by God. And I also need to say, if reincarnation is true, which we know it's not, but if it's true, I would like to be the son of Rob and Catherine. I would like to be one of their sons. I think that can only be good. But yes, thank you for allowing me to share, Lisa.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Rudolf, for not sugarcoating this process. Thank you for being so honest about the challenges and making it real. Also for you suddenly realizing this is a real child that you're struggling to adopt, and here he is now. Elsie, your adoption story is within family. What were the particular challenges that you faced when adopting Ethan?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is actually adopting him officially because adoption is very expensive. The time we got married, my husband was still an intern, so we didn't have a lot of money to go through the adoption process. Eventually, we did find one adoption agency that we could afford, but they rejected our adoption because his mom is still alive and he was not in any danger with my parents. So he was not eligible to be adopted. But also with family, there was a time my sister and I had a fight. And she sort of said, she wants her child back. And now the child is in the middle. But yeah, it was all resolved. I think most of the challenges that we've had were just between Sihle and us, because we adopted him when he was 6 years old, turning 7 and starting school. So in the townships, he didn't speak English, and now he had to go to an English and Afrikaans school. That was a big challenge for him to have to learn a new language. But also the kids at school, when Jesse would fetch him, they had questions. Why is your dad white and you're brown? So he had those questions when he came home for us. There was also, I think, like some identity, questions for him when he would ask us, like, when am I going to start looking like daddy, like turn white? And we had to explain to him that you're not going to turn white. You always be brown. You look like mommy. I think even during all that happening, we just felt strongly that he was meant for us. My family gave a blessing for that. Even for him, there were times when he would ask if his mom didn't want him. Is that why we, taking him? And we sort of like had to explain to him, like, no, she loves you, she wants you, but she can't be able to be with you now because she's got work. I think another challenge was when I fell pregnant with Bjorn, he sort of felt that we won't love him the same way. He would ask us questions like, who are you going to love the most? Is it going to be Bjorn? Is it going to be me? So we had to explain, we're going to love you the same way. And he would say, no, but you have to choose. And no, we're going to love you the same way. And even with Bjorn born, we had to like sit down and sort of come up with a timetable that I spend time with him, Jesse spends time with him, just to, show him that we still love him. We love him the same way. So yeah, those are the challenges that we faced.
Oh, thank you so much, Elsie. And thank you for giving us Sihle's perspective and also the struggles that he was facing, being an older boy coming into your family. And it's beautiful the way that you've handled this. And isn't that just such an amazing picture of God's love? Yes, we are getting someone. You were the first one in our family. Now we're adding someone to our family, but our love for you remains the same. It's just a beautiful picture. I want to pause here a little bit at the challenges and just throw out another question, maybe to Rudolph. Did you face any negative reactions from family or close friends about your choice to adopt? How did you deal with these?
Unfortunately, nothing. I think when the baby got to our arms, all the grandparents and all the family, they were just totally overwhelmed with this little boy. Yes, it was just amazing to see how God, I'll be honest, we were a bit concerned because part of our family is quite racist, and there's no other way to say it or sugarcoat it. They don't like people of any color. It doesn't matter what it is, but we don't have a relationship with them, and neither do we really. We are not really concerned with their opinion anyway. So it didn't really bother me. I've not till today heard anything negative about any of those family members. Because I don't talk with them. But for my immediate family, we had a few concerns, to be honest. We asked ourselves questions. Okay, we're going to bring a little baby boy into our family that is not white. And how will the rest of the family accept it? It is something we did ask. And we were concerned about a few individuals in the family, immediate family, but to be honest, nothing. We had the opposite effect. It's just as if hearts melted, and God used it as an opportunity, I believe, to really allow for somebody older to reevaluate and reflect what they truly believe about the humanity of someone else, and if it's really worth it to hold on to certain preferences, if you want to say it. That's the best way I can phrase it. And it's just amazing to see everybody is in love. I'm very blessed. We've got Candace's mom, her stepdad, her father, and my parents as well that live in Pennington. We brought all of the family together because they're old, and so little JJ's got all of these grandparents that he can interact with. And so you ask questions, and you go with some of them, you go, will it work out? But it absolutely just worked out. They're absolutely in love with this little baby boy. He's so spoiled. He goes to the beach every day. There's always a grandparent that wants to spend a little bit of time with him, so it saves on just daycare prices. We insisted that he goes to daycare at least 2 days this year, because he needs to interact with other children. He can't. It's so funny. My Candace's father has got a little bit of gout in his foot, so he walks like Candace's dad behind him, and then he mocks him, which is hilarious. But we realized that he has to interact with other children as well. So he's going to daycare on a Monday and on a Friday, and the rest of the time we just throw him amongst all of the grandparents, and they fight who's going to spend time with him. So we're quite blessed during the day to have him being looked after, and they take him to wonderful places to see, and they interact with him, and it's just an absolute miracle. And I need to say there were a few concerns, not just that the immediate family wouldn't accept this, but again, like Elsie said, there's a huge financial responsibility concerning children. I think for us at this stage, it's just something that we were concerned about in the beginning, but it is something that we look at now, and we don't care if we don't eat, and as long as he eats, and we're okay. That's how we feel, because we love this little boy so much. And it doesn't matter what happened. We realized very, very quickly that his needs are not always the things that we think is his needs. He literally just wants to be loved, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to see this little boy grow up. And like I said, it feels like he's always been here, because we're just so in love with him. And it's just an incredible, incredible opportunity, incredible journey. And if you're contemplating to do this, just do it. It's a huge blessing. I can't think of anything negative except changing nappies. That is my job. And luckily, I worked at Mseni AIDS Hospice and Joburg Gen for a while as a chaplain. So I knew what to expect. I cleaned the bedpans on top of Joburg Gen many a times. And so I said to Candace, don't worry, I'll do this. So I'm usually the guy that puts up the hand to change the nappy of JJ. It doesn't put me off at all. But it was getting used to, I must be honest. The stuff that comes out of a baby is pretty weird. But other than that, great blessing.
Let me interrupt you there. And Kath, maybe a question to you. You and Rob decided to adopt across cultures, across languages. Does this bring particular challenges, and how do you deal with them?
It's interesting because we adopted them as such small babies. So they were both 5 months old when we adopted them. They have our culture and our way of thinking. So that's because they've been brought up in our home. I think the challenge I found has been play dates. It's very difficult. Yeah, so the whole schooling aspect, we then looked for a school that was smaller classes, Christian, but also could give them the environment where they could play and feel accepted and have friends. So that was a challenge. we're now in a church community and Sunday school and everything's going well, but I can definitely say the first couple of years, it was just Rob and I and the two boys. It was, and our family, very close to our family and cousins, and they were all supportive. But I think the challenge was, yeah, because they were African, I couldn't always get play dates, or I always found I was babysitting them and a whole lot of children because that was the only way I could get play dates for them. So yeah, but it's a small challenge, but it was now it's worked its way out, and they're in a lovely school and they've got friends, and it's brilliant. I can say those were the initial challenges. With that, yeah, that's all I can. They are thinking and working like us because they've been brought up in our home. And I mean, sometimes Gabriel's been saying recently, Mom, do you know brown boys eat more food than white people? So I think he's just always telling me he's hungry. So we're like, white boys can also be hungry, like brown boys. But he just feels he has to explain that to us sometimes. And I think what's also good is we have a lot of open, deep conversations with them. And one thing our social worker told us from the word go is, and we've been doing this since their first birthday at 6 months old, is she suggested that we make a photo album of the journey. So like we took pictures of the baby's home where they came from. We had one picture of the tummy mommy that we call her. And, you know, so it's a whole journey of every year, and every birthday we sit down and we tell them their story. And we've been completely open about us feeling called to adopt them and why we adopted them. So it's complete honesty from the word go. And our social worker said, she advised us to do this because she said sometimes adoptive children can feel they've been lied to or haven't been told the truth. So if you do it from word go, they trust you implicitly. And the other thing is that if kids make fun of them that they're adopted, they can say, well, I know I'm adopted, and we have a certificate in their photo album that they belong to our family. And our social worker explained this one story that all the kids are making fun of this one child that was adopted, and he was confident. He said, I know I'm adopted. I have a certificate that I belong to the family. And it caused a big issue in the school because all the biological children went home and asked their parents, where's the certificate that I belong to my family? So they had a big school thing where they had to discuss it all and have parents meetings and teachers meetings. But our boys are sure of who they are, and they know they belong in the family. They were called to be in the family. Yeah, so I think I hope that answers some of your question.
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you, Kath. Thank you for adding that story also of the certificate. That's just amazing. Elsie, you touched on this one a little bit when you said of Cecily and children quizzing him about his dad. And it is true that adoption sometimes carries a stigma in society and people view it with prejudice. So can you elaborate for us, how do you explain your relationship to the child, and how do you ensure that the dignity that God gives him remains intact? Can you give us some pointers there?
Yeah, sure. Most people, when they see me with him, they just assume, he's my child, and we say that yes. But then when Jesse comes, then it's like, a white man married a black woman with a child. But then when it's the two of them, that's when, the questions come. But we do explain to him that God made us differently, but he loves us the same. We are all people. But I also think that he's been very blessed in that in his school, there are other kids that are adopted. So every now and then he would come home and say, did you know that Wayne is also adopted? That's, so things like that. Even at church, there's kids that have been adopted, and he sort of like relates with those kind of kids. When he started school, I think with Jesse and I, we were very scared for him. How is this child going to talk to these kids? But I don't know, God built this courage in him that when we dropped him off, he just ran into the school. And he came back home. He had made friends, but he can't talk to them. So I don't know how they sort of like understood each other, but that kind of helped him to learn English, because kids are not like us adults, laughing at each other if you can't speak well, if you can't say things well. Yeah, so I think with us just trying to explain to him that God made us differently, but he loves us the same way. That's why our family is blended. There's like 3 different colors in this household. But with Jesse's family as well, it's like that. His dad is Mauritian, so he looks a bit Indian. His mom is Danish. So it's also a mix of, a pot of masala there. So altogether, we had to explain that even to his cousins as well, because they also had questions, why does Bjorn look brown? His mom, it looks different. Uncle Jesse looks different. So we had to include that as well, explaining to the cousins why we all look different. But yeah, just explaining how God has designed us really helped us in him understanding who he is, and I think also loving himself. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing those stories of your beautiful blended family. That's just amazing. And bringing again through how God has helped Cecily and all his family members and his friends to understand this in a better way. Again, what a beautiful picture of God's family. It's not just one person of one kind, but a lot of people of different kinds. It's just amazing. You are all very proud parents, and you are gushing about your children. It is so touching. But maybe if you can share with us one story that you saw how God was especially working in the life of your child. Do you have a story? Anyone can jump in where you saw God's hand particularly on the life of your child. Don't be shy.
I'll start. I was trying to think, there's so many different stories, but I'll try and blend them in. When we got Ezekiel, he was very underweight. He also had very severe skin issues, and I was a missionary in Kenya at the time, so I didn't really know how to help him. It was so bad that he was bloody on his skin. I had to strap him to my body, and he was just really, really struggling. And then we felt called to Robert's got a full-time job with SAT, so we came back to South Africa, and God led us to a really good skin specialist that helped us and helped show me how to best help Ezekiel with his skin. And then he recovered. And he's just, his health, it's been a lot of huge issues. And that we often think, well, if he hadn't been in our family, how would he have coped? And then the other two that I can think of, he also had some really bad asthma, and one night he could hardly breathe, and we had to rush him in the middle of the night. And yeah, it's just been a journey of like, oh Lord, I can't lose him. Just feeling so close, and then he getting through that. And then the most recent one was when he got salmonella. And Rob and I did shifts. I mean, I thank God for the doctor we have, because he acted really quickly and moved him from one hospital to the next. And I don't think we realized how severe it was. And then Robert was with him in the ambulance, and I was with Gabriel, and then Gabriel started getting the same thing. And we had both boys in one room quarantined in St. George's Hospital, and it was touch and go, like every 30 minutes carrying one child to the bathroom, getting sick on both sides, nurses around me carrying the next son. And it was just, both Rob and I were exhausted, but I was just praying. I was like, Lord, I can't lose them, And their health was restored, and we got them back. And you know, when they're jumping around and all over the place, and you're like, I wish it'd calm down. But when they were sick, I was like, oh, I wish they'd be jumping around. Yeah, so it's been a lot of like very close to the mark. Just thankful that we didn't lose them, and that we still have them, and that they're very healthy at the moment. And yeah, I think in this journey, however long you have the child that you've adopted, now they're secure with us, and we've got certificates that are ours. And once you have that, it's amazing. It is a long wait, and it's trusting God. Continue, Lord, can we call this baby ours? But ultimately, our children belong to God, whether they're adopted or given birth. And whatever time you have with them, cherish it. I need to remind myself of this often. Spend a moment, hold them, hug them, tell them you love them. Yeah, so I think for me, I'm so glad they're alive and they're with us, and I'm so thankful for the time we've had with them, and I'm looking forward to the adventures that I have with them. And they're so creative, and so there's so many things we're discovering each year, and you will too with the children that you have. So yeah, so for me, just carpe diem, seize the day. Like Jim Elliot's missionary would always say, wherever you are, be all there. So if you're with your child, be all there and love them and tell them you love them. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kath. And thank you for being all here and sharing your heart so beautifully with us. We are now going to touch on the last question. So I invite the audience, if you have any questions for our panel, please start typing them in the chat box, and we will do our best to go through them. So my final question, let me see. Rudolph, let's start off with you. We might have someone in the audience considering adoption. What would your advice or encouragement to parents be who are considering adoption? Just a few pointers from your experience.
Yes, I would say start with a good adoption agency or even a church organization that can really help you and give you the right practical guidance as to what you need to do. You don't want to get three or 2 years down the line and realize that it's not an accredited institution, or that you've worked with somebody that really couldn't help you, or they have to refer you to someone else. Start from the beginning with the right people. We've got an incredible social worker with JJ, and she's just an absolute stalwart, and it's been so good to work with her. But I would say that is key. That is absolutely key. And the other thing I would say is whatever decisions you make, bathe it in prayer. I really mean that. Pray that God will just give you favor and grant you the opportunities to do the right thing and to get to the right place, especially with this process, because like I said, there's a lot of things that you do not anticipate that you have to confront, a lot of things that you have to work through, especially from the parents' side. If you can't get a hold of the parents, for instance, we had an instance where the mom literally left JJ in the hospital, went and fetched him, took him to his father, and basically left him. And so for us to contact that mother to get a few things done and things signed off, and it is part of the challenge. It's something we have to pray for, because the social workers can't make her do anything. We've placed ads in newspapers. We've done so many things. They can't force her. Don't know where she is. Don't know what she's doing. But we can pray for her and say, Lord Jesus, you bring this to the forefront, and please allow everything to just come to the forefront so the process can move along. And I must say, God has been faithful. But there's a few things that we had to, the only option we had was to really pray for it. So yeah, sometimes things are not in your hand, and you can just pray and say, Lord, please send your guidance, and please send your hand upon us in whatever we do.
Thank you. So what I hear is get a good agency, cover everything in prayer. And next week, we are going to meet Rudolph's amazing social worker, Mrs. Connie Hewitt. So please don't miss next week. That amazing social worker will be in the studio. anything from you, Elsie? Any practical pointers for people who are considering adoption, even people considering adoption in the way that you have done it in your family?
Yeah, I would say that the process is long. It's been 3 years with us and it's still not official. So we're still busy with the adoption process. But if it is something that you feel, you're called to do, I think you just need to stay in prayer and hold on. And with regards to family, yeah, there was a point where I was like, maybe this is not a good idea. But our love for him and the opportunity that we wanted to offer him outweighed everything else. So I think it's something to consider to help out with family children, especially, if they come from disadvantaged places. Didn't mention before, but with Sitle's dad, he was in prison, so he didn't have a father figure. So with seeing Jesse, being a father to him and, that relationship, I realized that it's something that I wouldn't have been able to do or give to Sihle. And God has placed him in that place to be that father for him. So yeah, I think the things that Rudolph mentioned, continue praying if it is something that you feel you're called to do, even though it can be a long process. But yeah.
Thank you so much. So what I hear is it can be a long process. Don't get discouraged. Keep praying. And then there are going to be challenges. If you adopt within family, there can be fights, misunderstandings, but eventually God will work this out. And it will be a beautiful thing for the family and for the child. Thank you for that, Elsie. Kath, some practical pointers from your side if there are people in the audience considering adoption.
I think, as was said, a social worker is, if you find a good one, and we were just led to a good one, and she gave us certain advices, which I'm going to repeat here because at the time I didn't understand. I wanted a baby that's just been born. And she explained, no, she only does adoption from 5 months. And she, as a social worker, takes care of the baby for the first 5 months in the way that she feels is right. And she does all the legal paperwork in that 5 months. So because she's aware of the challenges like Rudolph explained, when a mom, like in Ezekiel's case, said, I can't have this baby, she rushed to the hospital and said, no, wait, can you sign this? Can you sign this form? Can you sign this consent? So she had a file with everything ready. And then she quickly bought the albums of all the families. Which family do you want for your child? And then all the right paperwork was signed. And Linda, our social worker, was so well known at the magistrates court. She was there all the time, but her heart was for the babies and for the adoptive parents. So she said she wanted to protect us. So she does the advertising in the newspaper. She said, you must wait so many days if the mom changes her mind, which she's illegally allowed to do, if she wants the baby back. And then there's the birth father. Does he want the baby back? And then it's the grandparents. So by law, and I don't think those laws are bad, it gives the chance for the birth mother, the birth father, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, all the opportunity, at least that's in South Africa, the opportunity to change. So once those 60 days or whatever days are over, that's why she does 5 months, then she can secure a place of safety, which would be the parents that she would want to put the baby, the family in. So for us, the first thing was a right social worker that does all those steps. And I didn't actually know what I was getting in. So we were blessed because we didn't have all this waiting and everything. And when we got Ezekiel at 5 months, we could bond straight away. And there's more chance of him not being taken away. And they have to check your home, check that like all the things Rudolph explained that you need to check. And the other thing we chose close adoption, which I know some people might feel strange, but it's quite good because then the mom, the birth mom, if she wants to make contact or anything, she always does it through the social worker. So in Ezekiel's case, the mom didn't want any, didn't want any contact, and that's okay. But in Gabriel's case, it was closed. She agreed, and then we met her once, and she said she wants us to tell Gabriel how much she loves him and why she's doing this. And I mean, with all the money she had, she bought all his first baby clothes from Woolworths, and it was really beautiful to a beautiful woman, but very, very young. And but we also then we saved money to pay for doula classes for her not to be alone during the birth, all those things, a special safe house for pregnant moms and birth. Yeah, so there's lots of dynamics with our social worker that we did so that the birth mom could also be supported in this case. So the social worker that's really good is key, because then you make sure that the birth mom is taken care of, which is also an important part of your adopted child's process, and then also making sure with your social worker that you do the right thing. So I hope that helps.
That was amazing and very practical. I hear over and over, get the right social worker. Your social worker seems amazingly passionate about both the child and the adoptive parent. She helped you understand the law, which is very important. She helped you with all the paperwork. And then the choice of open and closed adoption. Thank you for introducing us to that concept and how each one then would play out. That is very, very helpful. Well, Kath, Elsie, Rudolph, we have truly been blessed with your testimonies and your sharing, your honesty. We were just so blessed, and you can see it from the chat box as well. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Thank you for being so open about your experience, also your children's experiences. Our society depends upon good parenting, and how tremendous it will be if our world had more strength and less brokenness. You embody the strength that we need to fight against brokenness through your adoption stories. Thank you for doing that. I just want to close in a prayer for you and your families. And then you have worked so hard. Thank you, thank you, thank you.